She is very passionate about the environment.
She's quite a lady, and I appreciate all that she has done.
Being a representative of a district in a city and championing a cause like this, that speaks volumes.
I've always been into sustainability. This would go back to the first term of Shirley Franklin. Oh my goodness! We applied for a grant from Dell Computers for $10,000. They said, collect all the computers, the used computers, printers, Back then, people were not even throwing their cell phones away. So it was really computers. Get it back to us. They gave us $10,000 to get it back to Dell Computers. And then they were going to properly dispose of them by taking the plastic, the glass, all the little parts, and taking it apart and then recycling all the parts that are inside a computer. And I loved that, and Cheryl loved it.
I got the word out by just going to all our neighborhood associations. I mean, literally every one of them.
We did it at the Civic Center. That was the very first one. Called for volunteers, and people started showing up.
When my mom passed away in 2006, it was my task for the next couple of years to clean their house out, whether it's paint and chemicals, old clothes, paper shredding. What do you do? So it kind of set me on a mission with this. At the time, the City of Atlanta's recycling manager was Mary Harrington, and I came down to see her, what would you suggest I do? Because really, I had no intention of doing this myself. It was more of City of Atlanta, what do people do? So she eventually hooked me up with Carla Smith.
When Peggy came to us in the beginning, we did our very first hazardous waste. They were having an eco convention out at Atlantic Station. But then I got to know the Braves. Steve Smith worked for Turner Broadcasting, and so he introduced me to Mike Plant. Mike Plant was over the stadium. We needed a parking lot, and we asked him, we said, can we use your parking lot? After that, we had met David with electronic waste locally. We didn't have to pay a truck to add to the carbon footprint to drive it all the way to Austin, Texas. So we started doing our electronic events at Turner Field.
Carla being Carla, we always tell anybody, the volunteers or anybody else, you have to have good shoes on and so on and so forth. Stuff's heavy, blah, blah, blah. Here comes Carla walking up with flip-flops. That was kind of an ongoing joke every year after that. I feel that she really grew the awareness. She helped us grow it, for electronics.
We started off with computers and the tires. The tires, Lord have mercy.
What we loved about the Tau chapter of Omega Sci-Fi was that they really embraced the sustainability of all of this.
We spread the word within the other Greek organizations, fraternities, and sororities.
Sat down with Councilmember Smith, and it was like, it's crazy to continue to do these events once a year at this cost, when at this cost, we could have a permanent facility. Long story short, we were able to lease property from, at that time it was the Department of Public Works, and Carla was, we're here, let's go. And that was the creation of Charm. 2015, when we opened, we had 5,000 people the entire year. Last year we had over 35,000, and it was COVID, as well as we're only open 3 days a week.
Charm is a nonprofit. They do it with a very little help from the city and a whole lot of help from our communities. So I want to thank the people that utilize Charm but I really want to thank the people that donate to Charm.
You have to leave the place better than when you got here.
It's been a journey and a challenge that without Councilmember Smith, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you today.
She cared about the environment and finding a way for her people to dispose of this stuff properly, instead of it just being on the side of the road.
She's been a true servant leader for the district and the city, and we appreciate her so much. Thank you.
All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Some people are having some technical issues and others are okay. So we will figure this out as we go along. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Matt Westmoreland. I chair the Community Development and Human Services Committee, and this is our regularly scheduled April 27th meeting. I do not know who is with us, so I will do a quick roll call. Councilmember Archibald, are you with us?
I'm here, thank you.
All right, good deal. And able to log in?
No, I can't log in yet.
Yep, that makes two of us. Okay. Councilmember Bond. Councilmember Brown. Councilmember Hillis. Here. Thank you. Councilmember Smith.
I'm here and I'm logged in.
Congratulations. Councilmember Shepherd.
I'm here and I'm not logged in.
Okay. All right. Well, we will figure out how to get through this day one way or the other. Ms. Pulandini, will you read our remote meeting statement, please?
Yes, Mr. Chair. This Community Development Human Services Committee meeting is being conducted remotely as advertised and as in accordance with OCGA 50-14-1. The meeting will be conducted in conformance with Robert's Rules of Order and the Rules of Council as authorized by the City Code. The public may access the meeting by dialing 877-579-6743, conference ID 831-599-1256, which was noted on the April 23rd public meeting notice. The public may also view the meeting on Channel 26, the Council's homepage at citycouncil.atlantaga.gov, the Council's YouTube channel, or the Council's Facebook and Twitter pages via @ATL Council. All presentations are available on the Atlanta City Council Community Development Human Services Committee presentation page. The agenda was published and made available on April 23rd via atlantacitygA.iqm2.com. In addition, the public is able to submit comments via voicemail at 404-330-6089 between the hours of 4 and 7 p.m. the day before this meeting. All persons present on the remote council meeting conference bridge are requested to mute your phones and speakers. Additionally, speakers must be acknowledged by the presiding officer prior to speaking. Each council member is requested to open your Outlook email and minimize the screen. Amendments, substitutes, and informational documents have been distributed to committee members beforehand. Thank you all in advance for your cooperation.
All right, thank you very much. The next item on our agenda is the adoption of the agenda. I will make a motion to adopt. Is there a second?
Second, Archibald.
All right, we've got a motion by Westmoreland and a second by Archibald. Mr. Hillis, how would you like to vote? Yay. Ms. Smith?
Yay.
Ms. Shepherd?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Brown or Bond, are you here yet? All right. By a vote of 5 yeas and 0 nays, the agenda is adopted. I will make a motion to approve our minutes. Is there a second? Second, Hillis. Motion by Westmoreland, second by Hillis. Ms. Archibald, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Shepherd?
Yes.
All right. 5 yeas, 0 nays. The minutes are approved. Next up, Mr. Massenberg, will you please play our 8 minutes and 36 seconds of public comment?
Members and staff, a special greetings to you citizens and voters of Atlanta, watching and or listening to your government in action and taking note of how comments from the public are being treated by our elected officials in this election year. Ben Howard, Senior Advocate, Public Policy Analyst. On the average, fewer than 0.2% of the 20,000 eligible senior citizens and stakeholders of neighborhood planning unit R attend NPUR the concerns of NPUR citizens are still being ignored. So where are you, NPUR 9, while the chair of your zoning committee is holding clandestine meetings and endorsing development of expensive housing units, some of which exceed $300,000, without insisting upon or even discussing an affordable housing impact statement? So where are you, NPUR 9, while residents are trying to find out what will happen to renters once the moratorium on evictions is lifted and landlords start putting people out onto the streets? Where are you now, NPUR 9, while NPUR residents are still trying to understand why senior citizens and disabled persons are not receiving notices of NPUR meetings? Where are you now, NPUR 9, while Coldest Claire and her money-seeking crew are traveling to nearby neighborhoods trying to promote their development schemes? But where are you, NPUR 9, when Debbie Skopczynski, president of the Atlanta Planning Advisory Board, asked at APAB meetings for reports from the various neighborhood planning units? Come out from behind the scenes, you NPUR 9. Stand up, speak out at public meetings and elsewhere, help address some of the concerns of the residents and stakeholders of neighborhood planning units or residing in senior citizen complexes and multi-family dwellings. Come out and speak out. Speak out, Anthony Robinson, Coldest Claire, Ricardo Jacobs, Alfred White, Vanilla, Scott Allison, Hathaway, Sherry Williams, Cheryl Brown, and UNPUR 9 supporters.
Giving on to the Spirit of Christ, I'm Marguerite Jordan. But the transgressors shall be destroyed together. The end of the wicked shall be cut off. Psalm 37, chapter 38, verse. In contrast to this blessed destiny, the wicked shall be cut off, an expression used often in the Old Testament of about death. That Montgomery, do you desire death? Be of the same mind one toward another. Mind not high things, but condescend to men of low estate. Be not wise in your own conceits. Romans 12, chapter 16, verse. Look every man also of the things of others, that is to teach, that is each is to be just as concerned for the needs and problems of his brother as he is for his own affairs. But we must all appear before the judgment seat of Christ, that everyone may receive the things done in his body, according to that he has done, whether it be good or bad. 2 Corinthians 5th chapter 10th verse. While it is true for the Christian, there is no condemnation. It is not correct to assume that God will not hold him responsible for the deed done in the body. O Lord, to us belongs confusion of faith, to our King, to our Prince, and to our Father, because we have sinned against thee. Daniel 9, chapter 8, verse. We have sinned, Daniel acknowledges. The people sinned, but always include himself in their number. I am not sinless, but seek to be a servant of Christ, righteously, to save myself and others from eternal damnation through Jesus' power. Jesus said, if I work on a job like you say, then he will take the gift. Jesus desired the money be in my hands to build his kingdom. Christ and I must move. Christ said I must move out of the house I am presently living in, because Jay Montgomery is coming on my roof. And it's not the will of God for him to be on my roof. Obey Jesus, be Christ-like men and women, to be like Christ, inherit everlasting life. Thank you.
I am Brother Anthony Muhammad. I am a soulful spiritual being having a human experience. I am aligning myself with the Lord's attraction of all elements of creation. And I recognize that I am energy, like we all are energy. 99.99% energy, less than 1% of physical matter. And we all ought to be one, keep a representing good and working for the betterment and the holistic order, so everyone can have access to these natural resources on earth. I want to thank this government to recognize you are in a position to help these young indigenous Native Americans to this North America land, right here in the state of Georgia. You had a young man on a mission, teach last bottom 10 years now to get running up and down the street to sell water. But you had a lot of workforce development. You had a lot of workforce development not to utilize better than 50 people or personnel to collaborate with other businesses to help have access to give these young people training and opportunities to work and learn how to create economic empowerment. You had money called Mr. Westmoreland a year and a half ago to go back to the federal government because we didn't find time to want to use the money and a lot of work for it. You had the same thing happened on Mr. Green. He let money go back to the federal government because he didn't want to utilize the grants. You had Ms. Shirley Frank that had a scandal that was known that the money's going to be used from a lot of workforce grants to help empower our people, and our people still are the number one person in jail. All these cities with these major mayors have a large concentration of young people being locked up. So community government and human resource committee, I'm calling on you to call on the mayor to say, let's collaborate, find ways to use these resources and help our young people have access to economic empowerment. And it's a lot to not want to think about you need to use yourself in the right side of your brain for the benefits you want to do good instead of the whole of humanity and find ways that just make everyone have access to economic empowerment. Here in the land, we're concentrating on keep, I say, human brother research committee, do right by these young men. Don't have another child be ran over by a car because he's more money. And you said no opportunity to talk to these Caucasian, these blacks, men, and women. We are Americans. Let's work together in Atlanta for these poor young black men. May I measure a hotel. Assalamu alaikum, brother, and brother Muhammad.
All right. Thank you to the members of the public for sharing your thoughts with us today. Next up on our agenda is a short public hearing, and so I will make a motion to open the public hearing. Is there a second?
Second, Smith.
Thank you. Motion by Westmoreland, second by Smith. Ms. Archibong, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Hillis? Mr. Hillis? All right. Ms. Shepard?
Yes.
Thank you. 4 yeas, 0 nays. The public hearing is open. Ms. Pulandini, will you read the caption, please?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Item number 1, 21-0-0063, an ordinance by Councilmember J.P. Massacite as amended by Community Development and Human Services Committee to amend the Atlanta City Code Part 2, General Ordinances, Chapter 158, Vegetation, Article 2, Tree Protection, to adopt a new tree protection ordinance for the City of Atlanta and for other purposes.
Thank you. Mr. Massenberg, will you play our 2 messages for public comment, please?
I am Carol Holliday, and I live in District 5. I am perplexed that the proposed tree protection ordinance continues to wend its way through City Council. Numerous inadequacies have been presented and allusions to amendments have been referenced. However, no improvements have been shared with the public since the draft was released on January 20th. And unfortunately, that draft did not take into consideration years of consistent and insistent requests from the community for better tree protection, greater transparency, better review process, better enforcement. After countless comments and calls and thousands of hours of the public's time, the January 2021 draft backslides on many of these important issues. These concerns were resoundingly restated during over 4 hours of public comment in the February City Council work session. Yet in the 3 months since that work session, no improvements have been released for public review. And now the fee study proposes a recompense fee that does not cover the cost of replanting, in conjunction with an ordinance that automatically reduces the fees further, even for the highest valued priority native shade trees. It is true that the tree protection ordinance has been under review for an unreasonable length of time. However, that is no justification for accepting an inadequate, regressive proposal. Why are we not addressing the real issues? Why are we instead getting caught up in convoluted proposals? Why would we eliminate all protections everywhere except single-family neighborhoods? Why would we require changes to development plans only after removing up to 50% of the best so-called priority trees? I've heard it said that we know we've succeeded if everyone is unhappy with the outcome. What a sad statement and what a policy failure. Success must be judged solely on whether we achieve our goals. We should all be happier when we meet the goal of a more sustainable city for our current and future residents. We're at a crossroad in Atlanta's development. As Mayor Bottoms testified in a congressional hearing, we have until 2030 to mount a viable and vigorous defense against climate change or risk catastrophic consequences. Please do not act in haste, but please do ensure we take the time necessary to pass legislation that accomplishes these important goals. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Hi, my name is Suzanne Blum. I live in Kirkwood. I'm a concerned citizen and an architect. And I'm calling today to urge you to consider the following in your public hearing tomorrow regarding the fee study for recompense. To begin with, the proposed recompense of $240 does not cover the cost of replanting. I think that number should be revealed to the public, but from what I understand, $240 does not cover the cost of replanting. It also does not sufficiently incentivize what should be the desired goal, which is to maximize canopy preservation. Furthermore, the automatic 25 and 50% discount for DBH replacement and a further 50% discount when preservation standards are met should be eliminated. These should only apply when preservation standards are exceeded. This is especially important given that the preservation standards in the current proposed draft ordinance are extremely weak and regressive. Thank you for your consideration.
Well, there we go. I've been talking to myself there for a second. Sorry. Thank you to those two members of the public for calling in and sharing your thoughts. Colleagues, one quick comment before we close the public hearing. We had originally talked with the planning department about having a final work session next Wednesday. We are going to push that a little bit further into May. Good progress is being made on this topic, and I very much look forward to talking about that publicly. But we are a little bit more work to do. So be on the lookout for that work session invitation sometime in the next couple of weeks as we reach an ultimate goal of having a strengthened tree protection ordinance that I'm fully confident we will get to. So if no one else has any comments, I will make a motion to close the public hearing and ask for a second.
Second, Smith.
Motion by Westmoreland, second by Smith. Ms. Archibong, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ms. Shepard?
Yes.
Mr. Hillis, are you here? All right. 4 yeas, 0 nays. The public hearing is closed. Next up are our two presentations for the day. The first is going to be from Atlanta Housing CEO Eugene Jones. Mr. Jones, are you with us?
Hello, Chair. Can you hear me? This is Eugene Jones.
Yes, sir. How are you?
How are you today?
Doing well. Appreciate you joining us and looking forward to the presentation and conversation.
And good afternoon to the remaining committee members. I appreciate this time and this opportunity to give you an update about Atlanta housing and what we've been doing through this COVID-19. And so, thank you. As you can see, I'm going through this slide presentation. I do want to make sure that we understand what Atlanta housing does. We increase affordable housing opportunities, provide services to improve our residents' quality of life, and we invest in our neighborhoods. And also Atlanta housing, every day, we're looking for opportunities, and we're trying to be innovative to bring new things coming to the city of Atlanta that make sense when it comes to affordable housing. And also workforce housing is on the top of our list also, especially closer to transit lines. And so we're looking at those opportunities and how we structure these deals have been very, very beneficial for the city of Atlanta and what we do in our collaboration. Who we serve? We serve Atlanta Housing serves households with low and moderate incomes, including families, seniors, veterans, individuals with disabilities, and residents who are experiencing at risk of homelessness. We service more than 25,000 families. And so to multiply that out by 2.5, we serve a little bit under 100,000 individuals. We touch their lives. 3,400 households with individuals with disabilities, 7,400 senior households, and 8,000 households with children. 95% of our families make less than $34,000 per year. I also want to make sure that you understand that the very low income, typically their income's probably no more than $13,000 per year. We have had the ability or the opportunity to raise those income levels to at least $22,000 per year. And so we are doing very well when it comes to providing opportunities, job training, and so forth. Atlanta residents face a range of housing needs. While some residents are experiencing or facing homelessness, others are simply looking for more affordable rental opportunities. And others are preparing to purchase their first home. Atlanta Housing exists to provide a spectrum of safe and dignified housing opportunities, just being human. Our safe quality rental homes, our residential communities, more than 10,000 affordable housing units in 112 developments across this city. As you can see, you can look at the zip codes and where we touch all those zip codes that you see on this map that I'm reading from. Actively rehabilitating aging properties through the rental assistance demonstration program. That means that we have former public housing seniors family units that we've changed, converted to RAD, which is Rental Assistance Demonstration Program, which converts from public housing to Section 8 or Housing Choice Voucher Program, which we have an opportunity to renovate and also upgrade those units that have been deplorable in reducing maintenance issues that we have in the building, elevators, chillers, all those types of things that we want to make sure that our residents are living in a quality of life issue. Between fiscal year 20 and 21, Atlanta Housing is aiming to preserve 1,500 affordable housing units through the RAD program. 1,500. So we have different programs, which is the Home Flex program. We provide property owners dedicate a portion of their units for eligible residents through a Home Flex contract. Long-term affordability options for our residents without our direct ownership or management of the unit. That is our Housing Choice Voucher Program, our Section 8 program. Rental subsidies are provided directly to the property owners and remain with the unit at the property. Formerly referred to as the Project-Based Rental Assistance Program. So when a developer comes to us and they're offering us an opportunity to invest in their property, they're asking us, Atlanta Housing, can we provide this development with project-based, not project-based, but Home Flex housing units, so that we can provide some affordability in a mixed income development. So then therefore we're uplifting those residents who are living in poverty impacted areas to go into other areas and prosper through job opportunities, job training, college, you name it, everything that we can do that we try to support, and we try to spread the wealth around this city, not just in the South, not just in the West, just not in the East, but everywhere in the city of Atlanta. We try to touch all those neighborhoods with our Home Flex funds. Also, our Housing Choice Voucher Program is 11,000 households strong, also known as the Section 8 program. Participants don't pay any more than 30% of their income towards monthly rent, while Atlanta Housing pays the balance. Certified inspection teams work hard to ensure that all homes meet our enhanced inspection standards. They just can't move into anything. There's what we call a housing quality standard that our inspectors have to go and inspect those units to make sure they have the basic needs and also hopefully some quality upgrades in those units. Staff focus on enhancing both tenant and landlord experiences. Down payment assistance, which we're very, very proud of. While home prices are rapidly rising in Atlanta, we recognize the need to support low and moderate income residents seeking to gain intergenerational wealth by purchasing a home. We know that the only way you can build wealth is to own a home. That is the American way from many years ago, and we want to continue that in that breath. Provides eligible home buyers with down payment assistance to purchase homes in the city of Atlanta. Eligible home buyers can receive up to $20,000 in assistance, and certain voucher participants, veterans, and education, health care, and public safety professionals can receive up to $25,000 in down payment assistance. As you see there, 232 households were provided with $4.9 million through a down payment assistance program in fiscal year 2020. That's impressive. My colleagues around the country have not been able to reach this type of goal that they have here in Atlanta housing. Our supportive housing. Our Haven program includes short-term permanent supportive housing. Using a housing first model, we offer stable housing paired with intensive case management and supportive services for individuals and families transitioning out of chronic homelessness. You just can't put a person in a home and just let them go and forget about them. There are supportive services that must provide to those residents as long as we can afford it, and we collaborate with all our city partners. Our collaborations are with Partners for Homes, the City's Continuum Care, the Veterans Administration, Atlanta Public Schools, Georgia Division of Family and Children Services, and Georgia Department of Behavioral Health and Development Disabilities. We provide 1,400 vouchers allocated to the Special Voucher Program. 244 of those vouchers are Home Again families served in 2020. 599 of those vouchers are Haven units supporting disabled or formerly homeless or at-risk households. And 500 committed units are Home Flex funding for PSH NOFA with Partners for Homes. We also, and we discussed it with our staff, we got to find a way in which we get those kids who are graduating out of those foster care. How can we get them housing? How can we provide a program with assistance with our colleagues, not just with HUB, but with other federal agencies to provide some housing and supportive housing for those kids who are graduating in foster homes. That is an issue across this country. Creating and preserving affordable homes, development activities, planning the redevelopment of several vacant public housing sites. Herndon, we get ready to hopefully open up a ribbon-cutting ceremony next month. The senior development is done, and we want to welcome you whenever we make that date to come here and join that ribbon-cutting ceremony. Inglewood, Bowen Homes received a planning grant from HUB, about $450,000, and that's a good thing. We're very, very excited about that. North Avenue, Palmer House, and Johnson Road. These developers were involved in an estimated $180 million in Atlanta housing investment, along with leverage investments primarily from the Department of Community Affairs, Invest Atlanta, and the private sector. The age funds will create 1,014 affordable homes, as well as 1,997 market rate units by 2027. Creating and preserving affordable housing. Co-development sites. Currently working with development partners on a number of other sites across the city. Estimated $16.7 million in Atlanta housing investment. 658 affordable homes, 860 total homes. Harmony at Baker's Ferry, Heritage Village at Westlake, Sliven Hills, number 2, and Phoenix Ridge. A co-investment fund in partnership with Invest Atlanta. Atlanta Housing participates in the co-investment fund program to leverage and optimize public resources. Estimated $53.7 million in Atlanta housing investment, 1,200 affordable homes, 1,400 total. Madison, Reynoldstown, London Townhomes, Beltline Crossing, Villas of Stonehogan, Flats at Stonehogan. Resident services and opportunities, which epitomizes what we do of providing services to not just to all of our residents, but to the surrounding community. Atlanta Housing is committed to doing more than providing housing. We have worked to develop meaningful community partnerships to better serve our residents at all stages of life. We just don't touch the lives of the people who live in our building. We touch the lives of the people in the surrounding community. We want to have a seamless transition to make sure that we fit into the community and we're not eyesores and we're not participants. Economic mobility. We offer residents with case management services to help them connect with career and entrepreneurial development through our Section 3 program. Research so that they can work towards earning livable wages. Connect residents with educational, child care, transportation, and health services. Thank goodness for the CARES Act, because we will be able to provide child care and transportation to our residents to get around this beautiful city of Atlanta. 5-Star Tenant Program provides financial literacy, credit counseling, and other related services to help residents meet their financial goals, including opening new bank accounts, increasing credit scores, and savings. Youth engagement. It is critical to invest in our youth, so AH partners with community organizations to connect residents with after-school programs, immersive learning opportunities, and summer programs. Work with Atlanta Public Schools to engage our young scholars in reading and mentorship programs, as well as the whole book drive and clothing bank. James Allen Community Scholars Award. Our former resident commissioner, James Allen, passed away last year, so we named the Scholars Award after him. Employee-funded scholarship for age-assisted youth in partnership with the United Negro College Fund. We have provided $692,000 in scholarships award to over 175 students through the James Allen Community Scholars Award, and we hope to increase that this year. Senior care. Aging Well is our signature health and wellness programs for older adults that helps them actively age in place. Work with partners to provide safe social engagement opportunities, focus on enhancing relationships with family, friends, and the community, emphasis on promoting physical and mental wellness. This has been an issue across the country, especially here in Atlanta. We're no different. Our residents are staying in place. They have no contact with any family members, friends, and so forth, and so we make sure that we engage our residents. We go into those buildings. We do wellness checks at least once a week to make sure that they're well, that they're getting their medication, that they're getting their food, they're eating. Emphasis on promoting physical and mental wellness. Goals to provide a continuing care for seniors to enable them to remain healthy and live independently with dignity in their homes. With the community health and transportation partners, have been able to assist senior residents with accessing masks and vaccines during the COVID-19 pandemic. My staff do go out and visit our high-rises to ensure that they're in compliance with all the rules from the city and also from the state. Atlanta Housing invests over $20 million in community spaces and resources in our senior communities. Stronger neighborhoods. We're committed to building stronger neighborhoods across the city, particularly those where our former public housing sites are located. Atlanta Housing is leading the Choice Neighborhoods Initiative to revitalize the former university homes, now known as Scholars Landing, and the three surrounding neighborhoods. And University Choice, I'm not going to read everything in detail as I've been doing before, but we received a $30 million grant for Choice Neighborhoods. This is the same thing that we're trying to do with Bowen Home. We already got the planning grant. We're going to try to get the implementation grant probably next fiscal year. And I'm just excited about that because I think Bowen Homes is a great development that we're all going to be proud of. We're working on our community partners to sit down and talk about meetings, what that revitalization is going to look like. And we've been being very successful. I think we had our first meeting with the community in March, and we're going to continue doing that until we submit our implementation grant. And so it looks real good. University Homes is just a great example of what Atlanta Housing has been partnering through this city, providing better housing that looks better than anything on the private sector. And I'll take that to the bank. At Bowen Homes, we received a $450,000 neighborhood grant, a planning grant. And so we're emphasizing on meaningful community engagement and outreach with our former Bowen Home residents as well as current residents in the planning area. And so we're going through that process right now. It's ongoing. The problem that I have with it is not a problem. I've always preferred to have in-person meetings because of the pandemic. We're doing everything virtually and so forth. But hopefully at some point, someday soon, we can have in-person meetings, and so we can look at people and look how they're responding to the proposed things that we're trying to do in Bowen Home. Committee members, I thank you very much. Are there any questions for me?
Thank you very much for your presentation. Also, have
have had an opportunity the last 2 months with Councilman Hillis and Vacant to take part in the Bowen planning group meetings that take place. Well, yeah, and so I know that there are a number of people very excited about that work over the next 18 to 24 months. Colleagues, any questions or comments?
Yes, this is Councilmember Shepherd. You all have, I'm in District 12, you all have a couple of projects in my district that are just vacant land at this point. And at some point, I'd like to get an update from you all on what's going to happen with those properties. Some of them are on Fire Road in the commercial area. There are also some on Fire Road in the Park Place South area, where for years now you all been talking about you purchased them for some housing development and some commercial development. And I'm just trying to understand where we are in this day and time with those particular projects.
Okay, Councilwoman, what I'll do is I'll have my staff contact you, and we'll specifically talk about your vacant land in your district. But what we want to do, we want to do a portfolio of all our vacant land, and we also want to make it public what we're going to do with some of the land we're going to sell, some of the land we can't build on it because of various reasons, and some it just doesn't make sense. And so we're doing a very expansive investigation of what we're going to do so that we'll let everyone know. So we have potential developers who want to develop in that area, or get your input about what you want to see in your area, and then go from there. The sad thing about it, we were going to do a developers conference last year to talk about all the vacant land that we have in the city, and we were going to propose what we're going to build on or what we're not going to build on, and we were going to get developers enticed to look at opportunities. And so we're still going to probably do that. We'll do it virtually, but I guarantee you my staff will get in contact with you and we'll tell you about what we plan on doing, but nothing's in stone, because we also, although we plan something, when we have a recommendation, we have to get the Board of Commissioners to approve it. But we will give you some information, Councilwoman.
Thank you. So what, by the way, just asked me today about, they assume that this property is in my district, Jonesboro North and South, so you may want to include that as, even though some of my district is real close, it's in the 5th district, but they were asking me about Jonesboro North and South, and I told them that they would have to talk to y'all, the Housing Authority, but just interested in finding out what you're going to do with the vacant land that y'all have.
Okay. Thank you, Councilwoman.
Thank you, Ms. Shepherd. Anyone else? I've got a couple. Mr. Jones, talk to us about the Civic Center site.
Everyone wants to hear about the Civic Center site, Chair.
I'm in good company.
Oh gosh, I hate to. It's like I'm a cat. I'm holding something back. I'm not trying to hold anything back. We're working on 2 entities for Civic Center, and I'm not at liberty to say that yet. But when I do, I will make sure that I inform you to your committee and so forth. But I also have to talk to this about I have to make a recommendation to the Board of Commissioners, but I also got to talk about the surrounding community and what they're looking for. I'm excited about the 2 opportunities that we've had. Now, what I'm getting ready to do is I'm getting ready to upgrade the Civic Center, which I'm fixing the digital board that's on Piedmont. And so I'm going to start advertising and trying to let everyone know what's going on and trying to advertise what's going on in the surrounding community. I'm going to start putting the fountain back up there together on Civic Center. I'm going to beautify it. I'm going to market it into the point in which we decide what we're going to do as we get a collaboration with the community. I'm going to provide an opportunity if they want to do weddings or anything like that. We're going to market that until we decide what we're going to do with Civic Center. But right now we have 2 opportunities, and they're 2 solid opportunities that we're going to move forward to. But I can't let the cat out of the bag right now, but I will be able to hopefully sooner.
No, understood. 60 days, 90 days, 6 months, 12 months?
No, I say within the next 60 days.
Okay.
If not sooner.
Okay. Good job. Anybody else?
This is Archie Bong. I have a question.
Go for it.
Okay. Are you, or is it Atlanta? Okay, so engaging the nearby neighbors as you're working through these plans for the Civic Center?
Well, absolutely, Councilwoman. We have to. I've already made a presentation to the community group, and so we already made our confirmation and our guarantees of what we're going to include them in there. Absolutely.
Include them in there in the sense of what? Explain that.
In the sense of talking about what we're going to do, how we're going to move forward, or who we're going to invest in, and how we want that community to, how they want that community to look. If it's affordable housing, is it a combination? Can we put a supermarket on there? We're going to get their ideas and input of what we're going to do at Civic Center.
Okay. That sounds good. We just, and I think our council members received this email, and it's a question about the AHA complaint process. And I guess they're asking, it says, including how residents are protected from retaliation. Do you know anything about what this is referencing?
No, I don't, Councilwoman.
So do you have a complaint process?
We do have a complaint process, and also it's on our website, landandhousing.org. And so all the information is on the complaint site, and our staff does look at those complaints, and we respond to them. But typically, if there's a complaint, Councilwoman, they usually get in touch with me. My cell phone number is public, and also my work phone number, and also my email. So typically, our residents call me direct. And so they typically don't have to go to the complaint line unless they just don't know my cell phone number or my work phone number.
And so the reference to retaliation, to your knowledge, have there been instances where there's been a complaint and then some form of retaliation thereafter? Well,
there may have been, but I've not heard about it, nor have my staff brought it to my attention. But I can just, hopefully just say that all they have to do is get in contact with me or my staff, where my information is on the website, and we can talk about that. A lot of people don't want to do it because they want to make sure it's confidential because of retaliation. And so if they call me or they email me, I'll go over there I'll go over to the building and visit with them personally and get the information, and then we make resolution, whatever that is.
Okay. Well, I hope the sender of this email is listening, and we'll follow that course. Thank you very much.
You're quite welcome.
Good deal. Any other questions? All right. Thank you, Mr. Jones. Appreciate you coming by today and updating us.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Next up is our second
presentation, which segues nicely. Commissioner Keene is here to talk about vacant publicly owned land. You all may remember that back in January, I believe, December or January, we passed a resolution asking the Department of City Planning to continue their conversations with the Beltline and Atlanta Housing and Invest Atlanta and the Land Bank as pertains to coming up with plans, either housing or otherwise, with the pretty sizable acreage that we have here in the city. And this is the next phase of that conversation. So, Commissioner, take it away.
Mr. Chair, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. Council members, we have some slides here that will help us go through this presentation. I'm not seeing the slides as you're seeing them. I'm going to ask for Julia's help moving through the slides, and I'll try to make sure I stay where you are on the slides. Joining me today is Josh Humphreys. Josh and his team in city planning have been our representatives in city planning working on this project for quite some time. And so Josh is with me to share in this presentation and answer questions if you have them. The first slide, Julia, this one is entitled Ongoing Public Land Development. Before getting into the presentation, I wanted to acknowledge the highly significant work that is going on with regard to public property and bringing public property to bear in terms of provision of housing in the city. My presentation into these many projects in the city, but I didn't want to start without acknowledging some of the work that you just heard from Eugene Jones at the Housing Authority, but other entities as well, of course, Murphy Crossing and Councilmember Shepherd's district, the Beltline's working on, all the work that Invest Atlanta's doing on the west side with the West Side Future Fund to protect land for housing and build new housing, affordable housing. And so there's an incredible variety of work that's going on in this regard. This presentation is about the public, kind of the overall public portfolio of public land and how we can best consistently prepare housing or property that the city and other public agencies own for affordable housing development in Atlanta. If you go to the next slide, Julia. Progress so far, we have convened a group that includes Invest Atlanta, the Beltline, Housing Authority, Land Bank to kind of be our working group on this issue. It involves all these organizations and all of our assets, whether it's the land assets that we or they control, or it's the collaboration that needs to occur between the agencies in order to bring the property to development for affordable housing. We did complete an inventory of all the parcels and a kind of baseline analysis of where we stand with these parcels, and I'll get into that, the specifics of that in just a moment. And then we've identified 4 city sites to bring forward to this committee for disposition to the proper partners for development of affordable housing. Those are later on your agenda and are 104 Trinity, across the street from City Hall, as well as 3 single-family sites that we'll be pursuing with the land bank for affordable housing. Next slide. Next slide is the timeline, just a reminder. The mayor's housing affordability action plan was released in June of 2019, and one of the recommendations of the action plan was what we're here presenting to you today, which is to take great advantage of the city land, public land, city and other public land in Atlanta for development of affordable housing. We did the initial analysis so that we could convene a cross-agency group that I'll mention in a minute. We released Atlanta City Design Housing in December, of course, of last year. And then the last item on the list is bringing forward these first parcels for disposition that are on your agenda today. Next slide, Julia, includes all of the collaborating agencies that have been taking part in this effort with us. As I said, Josh and his team leading from the Department of City Planning, but all of these agencies involved in it. This is a weighty effort and want to do it exceedingly well, such that this is something that serves the city for many, many years to come. If you go to the next slide, Julia, we'll start to get into some of the numbers here. What you'll see here is the total number of acres and parcels that are publicly owned. I will note a couple things here. One is this does exclude MARTA, ATS, and aviation parcels, so just a note that these numbers do not include those agencies. That's one thing to point out here. And another is, which I'll come back to in a couple slides, is the overall number of parcels, 2023, as well as the number of parcels that we've identified as suitable for affordable housing, which is 490. So the total number, 2023, and the total number that had been already identified as suitable for affordable housing, the 490, and I'll come back to that. The next slide, just for reference, gives you the totals as it relates to vacant publicly owned land, the total number of acres and the total number of parcels, which is obviously a subset of the larger number. And the larger number doesn't mean, just because a property isn't vacant doesn't mean it's not suitable for development of affordable housing. But just so you know, this is the total number of acres and parcels that are vacant, and again, excluding MARTA, AHA, I'm sorry, not AHA, MARTA, APS, and aviation. Next slide, Julia, which indicates that one of the things that we've done is prepare a vacant property tracker that was developed as part of this initial analysis, in part so that we could obviously be identifying potentially suitable land for affordable housing, but also to keep track of where each parcel is in terms of the development process, which will be important moving forward. You can see here a list of those that are in the different stages of the development process. If you go to the next slide, Julia, this gets down to, this slide speaks to the sites that have been identified as suitable for housing, and I'm going to go back to those numbers that I asked that you remember a couple slides ago. So on this slide here, sites identified as suitable for housing by agency, what you'll see is that, again, the number of total parcels is 2,023 on that first column of numbers. And by far the largest number is the city of Atlanta's parcels, 1,345. But you'll see there also, though, that the number of parcels that are identified as suitable, the city's is a very, very, very small percentage of those. So the city has a lot of parcels, but very few have been identified as suitable for affordable housing. In contrast, the Atlanta Housing Authority, not surprisingly, it's a housing agency whose mission is to produce affordable housing. Of their total parcels, 425, most of them, 92%, have been identified as suitable for affordable housing, So of those that have been identified as suitable for affordable housing, 490, most of those are the AHA parcels. If you go to the next slide. So the issues related to this slide is entitled Identified Challenges to Activating Land. The image on the right, obviously referencing the city has a tremendous resource in land that we are seeking to use as a means to address the city's affordable housing challenges. The issue is getting that incredibly large resource of land into service for this purpose. And so that's the issue at hand. The city controls a significant amount of this property, and we need a coordinated response across multiple agencies in order to activate the property. You go to the next slide. Just a note here on the construction financing and kind of financing in terms of development overall. Obviously, there's a critical need for dedication of affordable housing, critical need for funding for affordable housing. We have financing tools for the construction itself listed here on this slide. The issue that we really are focused on right now is the investment that we need to make in the pre-development analysis of land such that we can bring many, many more of those city parcels into service for affordable housing. So take them from the category of we're not sure if it's suitable for affordable housing into the category of absolutely suitable for affordable housing for those that can be, such that we can work with our partners to bring those properties into development. So the point is, there's the main issue that we see in terms of investment is the investment that we really need to make in the pre-development analysis such that we can bring these properties forward. Once we do, there's various mechanisms that already exist that allow us to proceed with development. Next slide, Julia. this next slide gets into that issue, which is we do control most of the land. We needed a coordinated process to activate it. And an important role for us is to deal with this site selection and pre-development analysis so that we can bring more parcels, like the 4 that we have before CDHS today, but consistently bring more parcels forward for disposition to be developed for affordable housing. And that involves increasing the capacity of our Housing Innovation Lab, which can look at design, planning, financial feasibility, programming, not only in support of just the city parcels, but all of our partners, such that we can determine the best design for and use for property and bring it to council for action based on what we determine to be the best approach to any particular piece of property. So we've got to beef up our capacity to do this kind of analysis through our Housing Innovation Lab. You go to the next slide. Interagency development principles. This is important. We have developed what are we trying to do here overall, and that includes engaging the community in how we use public land for the purpose of affordable housing. There has to be a community engagement aspect of this, that we're really prioritizing long-term affordability in all that we do as an agency, as a city. We're looking for long-term affordability for anything that we're investing our land in. We're also looking to, as much as possible, control the land in the long term. So, for instance, long-term ground leases. We don't want the city to lose control over the property in any case that we can. We're looking for creative design that's addressing issues of sustainability, for instance, and lifestyle affordability, that we're focused on people's access to transit and reducing energy burdens, that through the design of anything that the city's involved in, we should be pushing for creativity and the overall affordability of the lifestyle for people that live there. We are looking at affordability for all different household types, whether it's rental or owner-occupied housing, finding creative ways to address people all up and down the income spectrum. And finally, that when we're bringing, again, public resources to bear, we're demanding innovation in design and financing. This isn't something that we want to enable more conventional development. If we do that, we will have missed a great opportunity here. We want to push the community towards innovation such that we can produce more units for the same investment. You go to the next slide. Regarding the Housing Innovation Lab, it's an important role, and we have done some work through the Housing Innovation Lab, working with affordable housing developers, trying to help them through the best way to make the most of the land to produce the most housing and achieve all of those goals that I mentioned in the previous slide. This is in the Department of City Planning in the Atlanta City Studio, but this is a resource that supports all of our agencies. If you go to the next slide, we've got the examples of the 4 properties that we've got on the CDHS agenda today. 3 of them are single-family lots. These were part of the city's homestead program. We have agreed with our partners the best approach to these is to partner with the land bank and community land trust to develop for sale housing, but with the land trust model. So the land trust will maintain the land and sell the house so that people are gaining equity in their ownership of the property, but we're keeping the house affordable in the long run. So that's those 3 sites. And then the next slide, identified site on Trinity Avenue across from City Hall, which is very different. This is a site that is suitable for much denser development. This isn't single family type density. This is urban density, partnering with Invest Atlanta to go out with an RFP and attract a developer to partner with the city and Invest Atlanta to develop much denser affordable housing on the site on Trinity. If you go to the next slide, the second challenge around taking advantage of these many assets the city has is to deal with those parcels that we currently have not identified as even suitable for affordable housing, and how best to do that. That's the second kind of aspect of this challenge. Once we identify sites are suitable for housing, then with a team through the Housing Innovation Lab and partners, we can begin to do that pre-development analysis such that we can bring those parcels forward. But the other aspect of this is all of those parcels that we have not determined yet are suitable for affordable housing. So if you go to the next slide, what we're also doing is we are creating an asset mapping advisory council among these agencies, and this would include city staff, of course, from city planning and DEEM, but also the other agencies that are partners in this process, public agencies that have land, so that we can work and get, recommendations from nonprofit and for-profit developers with regard to the potential for public land assets. But any involvement by a non-public entity, of course, would involve some kind of procurement in the sense of RFP. But initially, with regard to the properties that are not yet have been determined to be suitable for housing, produce an initial report to the mayor on how best to move forward. If you go to the next slide, this is just a couple slides to illustrate the point here with regard to these 1,500 or so parcels that have not yet been determined to be suitable for housing. If you go to the next slide, I'm now going to get to the case study, the Garnett site adjacent to the Marta Street downtown. This is just an example of this. In cases where you've got a quote-unquote use of the site, in this case surface parking, it may be in fact providing some value to the city right now, but this asset mapping group, advisory council, will be looking at sites like this to determine what is the actual potential value of this property. Is it possible that there's a higher and better use that involves housing? This is not unique to Atlanta, but in a lot of cases, cities have thought of their property as having a value based on the cash that we're receiving for it, in this case, surface parking, or the value of revenue from parking, rather than thinking of the parcel as having a greater value based on its potential use. So if you go to the next slide, the valuation problem, we may be looking at this now as something that has value for what it is, and missing the incredible opportunity around the value of what it can be and what the potential use of the property could be. And that would be the focus of this asset mapping advisory council. If you go to the next slide, reevaluating our approach to valuing public assets, this sums up that idea. The point being, we see what's above the surface in terms of the value of this asset, but there could be far more value that we're not seeing that's below the surface that we need to concentrate on. And in the city's case, value has to do with more than one thing. You know, for us, among the things that create value out of properties like this are things like equity and affordability. That has great value to us as a public agency. So as we look at a property like this, or many of these ones that we haven't yet determined are suitable for affordable housing, the value proposition is a real estate one, but it goes beyond that into, you know, community expectations about the city and how we employ assets like land. If you go to the next slide, Julia, just a case study from Boston, which is an example of a city going through a process like this to evaluate its land in this way. And you'll see here the difference in value associated with land that, on the one hand, at the beginning, they're looking at just on a cash basis or based on the current use of the property. Then you look at the value having gone through a process to look at the highest and best use or the market value of the property and the incredible increase in value that was kind of unlocked in the Boston example. If you go to the next slide, Julia, then here are our next steps. We have 4 test sites, of course, on the agenda today, as I've mentioned a couple times. We're going to be beefing up our Housing Innovation Lab to support especially the work on the properties that we've already determined to be suitable for affordable housing, so we can bring more of those and more of those consistently forward for development of affordable housing. And then we're kicking off the Mayor's Asset Mapping Task Force Advisory Council to begin to look closely at the parcels that we don't know yet about so that we can produce a report similar to what Boston did to do the kind of evaluation we need in Atlanta's case, such that we take advantage of this huge asset that the community has at its disposal. That is the conclusion of the presentation and slides. Mr. Chair, and myself and Josh are here to answer questions.
Thank you much. First off is Mr. Hillis. Thank you, Commissioner King, for the presentation. Well, I guess one way to sum this up is kind of depressing that we have over 1,300 parcels in the city, and we've only ID'd 8 of them so far. So there's obviously a lot of work to be done. But I can, somewhat speak to some of the frustrations with trying to get unused land that the city has back to meaningful use. And I'm sure all council members have some type of examples. And this is just scratching the surface of, some land I know in my district. I have, one fire station that's abandoned, that's crumbling down, that I actually put in legislation a year or 2 ago to demolish, and it's still sitting there. So I need to follow up with real estate on that. Soon to have another abandoned fire station in the district, which I'm sure history repeats itself. It will stand for many years before the city does something with it. But one of the most troubling issues with housing that I've dealt with over the, this is my first term as a council member, is, and Commissioner King and many others are very well aware of this, but with Westside Park, that was a large parcel of city land. Watershed needed it for a very good purpose. I support the park there.
But while I was a council member, it was decided that we're just going to plot the city's largest park down on the west side and not take into account housing, take into account transportation, things that are just as important as watershed or parks. So then we started looking at many of the other city parcels around there. There's a parcel, memory serves me right, 9 to 13 acres of city-owned land on Johnson Road that is just sitting there. That could be developed. It would have been great if we could have developed Westside Park as a eyes on the park development. Just around the corner from Westside Park is the abandoned gun club park. And over the past few years, I've had many people, whether it be environmental groups, developers, want to turn that into an eyes on the park development. They've got really next to no cooperation from the city. It seems to have a one-track mind. A lot of the excuses, well, we're working on Westside Park right now, which has no housing. So I'm hoping that we can turn this into something good. As I said, a lot of progress to be made, but we'll just kind of like to hear some feedback as to the issues that I brought up. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Hillis. I think the frustration you are expressing is one that everybody shares and is a long time coming in Atlanta. This is, kind of a situation that is almost kind of historic in the city in the sense of how we got here. When you talk about 1,500 parcels that, that we still need to work through in terms of their suitability for development, that isn't something that happens in a year or 5 years. This is over the course of the city's history. And I think the individual instances that you've raised, the fire stations and it's about 9 acres on Johnson Road are good examples of the kinds of things that we want to now be able to bring forward for development in a way that will satisfy that very frustration you're expressing. So I think the good news is you've got a team of people that includes our real estate group now, and Remy and his group are thinking as urgent and creative about this as anybody to start addressing these long existing frustrations like the one you've described, Council Member, and including the involvement of the public and in general more kind of overarching planning related to our investments. You're speaking to the West Side Park, but whether it's something as large and of that kind of scale, or even something smaller like one of the fire stations, doing it in a more holistic way. The Housing Innovation Lab, the whole idea there is that we've got a team that's able to approach development the way you're describing. Don't just think of the one thing. Let's look at what's happening around it so that we're designing a community, not just a parcel. And that is the whole intent of this team that will be supporting this work. So that's I would just kind of end on the little bit of optimism that you expressed in your comments, Council Member.
Yes, thank you for that, Commissioner. And the departments living in their own silos, and looking forward to seeing no matter what department is involved, that they consider all the other departments when they start a project. And I think Westside Park being a case study in that. So looking forward to the progress and working with you and your department and all the other departments to get us closer to where we need to be. So thank you again, and thank you, Chairperson Westmore.
Sure thing. Mr. Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner Keene, it's great to hear you on the line. I appreciate your work in moving this legislation forward. I just had a few questions I wanted, and I apologize. I kept getting disconnected off the line, so I missed some of the presentation. But you know, when I first discussed drafting this legislation with Councilmember Westmoreland, looking at ways to explore leveraging vacant city-owned land, I didn't understand why this was something, Commissioner, that we were really just looking into now. Because I remember before I came on to council, Terry Lee had performed a study on the land, and that was probably well over 2.5 years ago. So I really didn't understand, especially given you know, just the condition that the city's been in and some of the struggles that we face, you know. And you know, I think as we continue to move into a grave housing crisis in the city, I just feel like we should be taking immediate actions to address the housing insecurity. And I heard you say before that, hey, some of this land could be better suited and utilized in other ways that I guess may not be suitable for housing, which is fine, you know, but given that the city's facing this housing crisis and we need some immediate housing, I just didn't understand why it took so long. That was my first question. Commissioner, if you want to just respond to that.
Yeah, before I continue. Yeah, the first thing I'll say is that I'm not sure exactly what specifically you're referring to in terms of what Terry Lee had been working on previously, but this is the first actually ever comprehensive analysis of all the public land inventory in the city. There have been analysis done in the past around certain aspects of it, but this is the first time we've had a full, complete inventory of what's available of public land for use for housing. And that's exciting. In terms of why it's taken so long, I mean, one slide I started with, of course, was that there are lots of things happening with regard to public land right now that's being used to build affordable housing, among other things. But this isn't to say that there isn't already great investment happening in public land to bring new affordable housing to the forefront and into development. So I don't think it's a case of not pursuing use of public land for affordable housing. I think it's really a case of understanding, first of all, the scale of the opportunity that we have as a city, and then putting in place the kind of administrative mechanisms to bring it forward faster and more consistently. I did not mention that there would be, I didn't mention in my presentation that there would be cases that land might be suitable for something other than housing. I'm really just focused on housing. And the case I mentioned, even on by the Garnett MARTA station, that's a case that I would expect would include housing and would include a vast amount of affordable housing. So I think everything that we're thinking about in terms of public assets would include at least some aspect of affordable housing, if not solely or much of it being affordable housing. So, Councilmember, to the first question, I think this is the first full inventory we've ever had of city land like this, and there are many things happening on city property right now that are affordable housing. It's just that we want to bring forward many more of these city assets in service to affordable housing faster and more consistently.
Understood. Yeah, so Commissioner Keene, I'm speaking about the study that Terry Lee performed about 2.5 years ago. It was before I came onto council, and it was a study that accounted for all of the city-owned land, both vacant and occupied. which was part of the exhibit that Councilmember Westmoreland and I included with the legislation that lent for the administration to perform the comprehensive analysis that was done.
Okay. You know which one I'm speaking. So I guess, and my whole point is, Commissioner, look, I appreciate that we're getting to the work and we're getting it done. I didn't understand why the comprehensive analysis had not been done when we had already surveyed and known all of the parcels that the city owned and which ones were vacant, how many acres there were.
You know, this study had been done because I requested it from Terry Lee, and I had it for a while before I approached Councilmember Westmoreland about drafting this legislation. So that was my first question, but we can move on from that, Commissioner. I wanted to ask you in regards to, I understand that you're saying out of all the parcels of land that 8 are suitable for housing development?
That we have determined so far, yes.
Okay, and Commissioner, how many are still, and I apologize if I missed this in the presentation, my apologies. How many have been, do you still need to work through to determine if it's suitable for housing or not?
Well, the vast majority of them, Councilmember. I mean, the 8 that have been determined to be suitable, we've got 4 of them on your agenda today, but of the remainder that are city parcels, we have to do evaluation of all those to determine if they're suitable for affordable housing.
Okay. And I'm sorry, I thought when you were speaking
and speaking about the determination that were made around this specific legislation and the use of vacant city-owned land, I was under the assumption that work had been done. Commissioner, I heard you speaking about like affordable housing, and I know that was the purpose of what we were asking for within the legislation when looking at vacant city-owned land. And some parcels may have been suitable and some may not have been. Was there a variance
between what we could utilize city-owned land for to build out affordable housing versus what we could use city-owned land for and maybe build market rate housing? Was there any kind of difference in the analysis between the two with regards to what you saw as suitable or not?
No, housing is housing. I mean, whether the degree to which it has market rate would be something that we would determine, and maybe it wouldn't include any market rate, but the degree to which it does would be a product of, what is our development approach to the parcel? So, yeah.
Understood. So, and my last question, I'll yield back to Chairman Westmoreland. When looking at the highest and best use of the parcels,
what kind of determining factors
are you all considering in figuring that out with regards to the city vacant land?
Well, it's going to be, quite a variety of things, Councilmember, depending on the location of the property and the condition of the property, the surrounding uses, and all of those things, where it is in terms of the city being especially important as to the density that you can achieve and, approaching it like any developer would when it comes to the potential for a property. But as I said in the presentation, we're not your normal developer. There are things about land and the value of land that we make a priority that your average developer doesn't. But other than that, approaching it as any developer would in terms of the potential for construction on the site.
Okay, one more question. I'm so sorry, I forgot I had it. The asset mapping task force, right? I heard you speak on that. I wanted to ask, what made you all choose to move in that direction as opposed to bringing in an asset management consulting firm that can perform an analysis and get the work done, as opposed to a task force that the process may take a little bit longer to try to, bring folks together, have meetings, discuss certain things. Task force can tend to draw out a process. So I was just curious of what made you choose that as opposed to bringing in a consulting firm that could go in and do the analysis and get the work done.
Well, all I'm referencing, council member, is the creation of a multi-agency group, but the way that they go about their work will be the way that will allow them to work the fastest and in the most exceptional way. Whether that involves engaging other help, will determine that. But that's all I'm speaking of, is we're getting started with the right group to lead this effort.
Okay. Yeah, I only asked that question because the city, and again, Commissioner King, I'm not speaking in regards to you or anyone else. I'm just speaking in general. The city often deploys all of these task force and all of these things that are designated to do the work, and council does too at times. And it just seems that it just drags out the process, and we can never get to the actual results or getting things done. If they do, it just takes a long while. So that was really just my only question about that, was because, bringing in a task force as opposed to bringing in a consulting firm and just having them go to work, understanding what their task is and what they're designated to do and what the city has designated as the criteria for what they're supposed to do. I just see it as something that we could get immediate results on. But I'll digress, Commissioner King. Mr. Chair, I'll turn it back over to you. It was a pleasure speaking with you. Tim.
Thanks, sir. Any other questions or comments from folks? All right, Commissioner, I've got a couple. Back to the 8 that we've discussed a couple of times now. You may not know much about them off the top of your head, but to the extent that you do, can you walk us through an example or two of where they are, or how many acres they are, and what the conversation was like internally that deemed them suitable in the first review of properties?
Josh, if you're on here, do you want to respond to this question? Josh Humphreys?
Sure. Can everyone hear me?
Yep.
Mr. Chair, so of the 8 that are city sites, 4 of them are actually in legislation today, so the 3 single-family sites and the Trinity site. And so I use those as examples of how we were able to move those ahead a little bit faster. The 3 homesteading sites were originally identified a couple of years ago for single-family development. Reason we're moving to the land bank is just after all this work with the other agencies on how to better move this forward and achieve the outcomes we want to achieve, that moving it to the land bank to work with the community land trust works better than the homesteading program, just from kind of a programmatic element. So that's why those are moving, and we'd already done analysis on the site to identify them as suitable for single-family type housing. And similarly, the Trinity Avenue lot is one that for the last, I think since 2018, our office had been working on internally. And then as a result of this working group and better coordination with the agencies, really realized that to move the property and to really get it developed for high density multifamily housing, that partnering with Invest Atlanta for that RFP process makes a lot more sense than for us as the city, and there's better situated to do so. But for those 4 sites, as examples, we had done kind of pre-work on that, and then For the Trinity site, the pre-development costs associated with that, we're able to work out with Invest to use some funding they had available to cover the costs of pre-development, since we didn't have a budget in this year's fiscal year budget for pre-development costs for this land. So that also allowed us to move a little bit faster.
Okay. And then because Councilman Hillis brought it up, and it was one of the first parcels that also popped into my mind at the beginning of the conversation, that 9 acres that we have right across the street from Boyd Elementary School in Johnson, right? That's one of the remaining 4. It's a undecided, or was deemed a no, and if it was deemed a no, kind of what was that conversation like?
Sure. So that's a site that we actually spent some time, went out there last year to look at the site as well. And that's a site where I think identifying kind of the gap in both in-house skills as far as building up the housing innovation lab for financial and for kind of design feasibility, where we were lacking at the time and still are right now. And then also the budget to do so. A site of that size is heavily forested. To do the pre-development work, just to do kind of initial fiscal analysis of what that site could do, it's going to cost, $50,000, $75,000 just to get the site before we even think about doing an RFP. And that really gets back to the point that Tim was making in the presentation, that these are the limitations that the city has had as far as developing these sites and even identifying them and being able to surely say that these are suitable for development. Is not having the infrastructure in place to do that pre-development work on sites that we all look at and say make a lot of sense. That works just good due diligence before we ever do an RFP.
So that was an outcome. That was an outcome of this work to determine, where do we need to put our resources, and pre-development analysis like that, as Josh is mentioning, in the case of that 9-acre parcel, would be hugely helpful. That is not a really simple parcel to deal with.
Yeah.
It has some very significant topography, and again, we as a city, we want to develop affordable housing. We also want to do it well, and so that one needs a little bit of additional analysis to determine what portion of the property is most developable and how best we would do that.
Okay. And then I went back and pulled the Excel spreadsheet that Councilman Brown was talking about earlier as it relates to the City of Atlanta properties and their address and acreage and neighborhood and the department that they belong to and whether they're quote unquote occupied or not. And for example, there's a parcel of 22 acres, 1139 North Avenue Northwest. It's right next to Maddox Park, across the street from the Vacant MARTA station, and it is currently the site of Public Works / DOT storage of cars and stuff, so to speak. As places like that corridor develops pretty significantly and substantially over the next 3 to 5 years, when you all looked at a parcel like that was 22 acres, but is currently quote unquote occupied by a department that was deemed either not suitable or don't know, but if there were to be, like, where and when would the conversation be where we'd say, given what the Beltline has been publicly reported to be purchasing over there, and given what's happening with Microsoft and elsewhere, that might not be the best place to store DOT vehicles, but to develop those 22 acres.
Yeah, it's a good point. And, that parcel is, the complexities of it have to do with all you just described, the current use of the property, the condition of the property, and the potential of the property. And that's a great example of a property where as I gave the case near the Garnett MARTA station, where we're utilizing that one right now for surface parking, but it has a better use. That certainly would be the case with this parcel you're speaking of. So that's a great example of one that we haven't determined to be suitable yet, but will be one that we're evaluating, such that we make sure that we use this asset that the public owns at the right time and in the best way. The good news about it is the city owns it. So as that area is changing and affordability becomes ever an increasing concern of ours, we have that asset to bring to bear. And it's a great example of one that we think will be evaluated by this group and determined how best and when best to bring it forward.
Okay. Good deal. Any other questions or comments? All right. Thank you much.
Thank you very much.
All right, Ms. Colendini, will you please sound our ordinances for first reading?
Yes, Mr. Chair, item number 2, 21-0-0224, an ordinance by Community Development Human Services Committee, waiving the requirements of Chapter 2, Article 9, Division 1, Section 2-910 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Atlanta, Georgia, and authorizing the mayor or her designee, including the Commissioner of the Department of City Planning, to apply for and accept an Environmental Protection Agency Brownfield Revolving Loan Fund supplemental grant in an amount not to exceed $500,000.00 on behalf of the Department of City Planning for the City of Atlanta Brownfield Revolving Loan Fund and for other purposes. Item number 3, 21-0-0225, an ordinance by Community Development Human Services Committee authorizing the mayor or her designee or the chief procurement officer or his designee on behalf of the City of Atlanta to acquire from the Conservation Fund 15 parcels comprising of approximately 5.61 aggregate acres of real property adjacent to Paul Avenue Northwest and Bernard Road Northwest for development at the park at a total purchase price not to exceed $1,071,304.23, authorizing the mayor or her designee or the chief procurement officer or his designee on behalf of the city execute all documents necessary to acquire the property, authorizing acquisition, due diligence, closing costs, signage, demolition, site stabilization, and other site development costs to be paid from the Park Impact Fee North account, amending the 2020 General Government Capital Outlay Fund budget in the Department of Parks and Recreation and Department of Finance, Parks North Service District by transferring to and from various accounts listed, waiving Section 2-1541D of Article 10 of the Procurement and Real Estate Code of the City Code of Ordinances and for other purposes. And item number 4, 21-0-0226, an ordinance by Community Development Human Services Committee authorizing the Chief Financial Officer to amend the fiscal year 2022 general fund budget by transferring an amount not to exceed $29,395,388.79 from the committed fund balance to the Capital Finance Fund, and to amend 21-R-3146 by updating the funding account stream for EAS 1200169 supplemental staffing services and for other purposes.
Thanks much. On to ordinances for second reading.
Item number 5, 21-0-0190, an ordinance by Community Development Human Services Committee authorizing the mayor or her designee on behalf of the City of Atlanta to execute an agreement granting the Atlanta Development Authority doing business as Invest Atlanta an option to purchase the city's interest in the property located at 104 Trinity Avenue, Southwest Atlanta, Fulton County, Georgia, 30303, authorizing the mayor or her designee on behalf of the city to execute all documents necessary to consummate such transaction and for other purposes. There's an amendment in your packet which attaches Exhibit A, which is a map of the property.
Okay, two things before we get started. One, I failed to recognize Councilmember Bond and Brown, who joined us well over an hour ago, so I apologize for that. Secondly, Ms. Colendini, do I need to do a roll call vote for everything we're going to do from here on out, amendments and final action?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
All right. All right, colleagues, here we go. There is an amendment.
Can I ask a question? Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
I would imagine that a roll call would be necessary if it were not unanimous. So that's just an observation.
I'm happy to do on unanimous consent if the members present, if we think that's appropriate.
No, what I'm saying, they would say aye, and they do, and then they say all nays, and nobody says nay, and nobody thinks. Guess what? Now you have to do a roll call. That's just my thinking. I don't.
Yeah. What do you think, Ms. Colendini?
Yes, actually, what we will do is we can just record any names.
Perfect. Thank you, Ms. Archibald. All right. I will make a motion to amend item number 5. Is there a second?
Second, Brown.
Motion by Westmoreland, second by Brown. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Aye.
7 yeas, 0 nays. The item is amended. If there are no questions or comments,
I have a question.
Okay.
Mr. Westmore, I have a question. I think I'm in the system at this point, but I guess nobody else is in, so I guess I'm the only one in. That 104, this is 104 Trinity, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So I believe we had discussion this, maybe I'm the only one that remember, but at some point there was a long time ago discussion about making it into a park. And one of the reasons they were talking about is right across from City Hall at that corner where right now we have some parking. Like right now, I think it's only parking for when people are working in the building or something or city employees. But there were some environmental challenges on that parcel, I thought. Do anybody know anything about that?
Yeah, Mr. Humphreys, can you speak to that?
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Mr. Chair. Yeah, so we are working with, that's one of the things that we're working through doing, that kind of referred back to the comment earlier, the pre-development work on the environmentals to get all that cleared and ensure that it's in clean shape. So that's something we've partnered with Invest Atlanta, kind of working through all that and, you know, clear title, everything related to it. So in the work that we've done so far, we've not uncovered any environmental stuff and any kind of historic information the city has or any of our initial analysis on the site.
Okay, thank you. I just remember there was a discussion about making it to a park at some point across from City Hall, and there was discussion that they were saying that's the only thing that could be done. I don't know. So I was just asking to get clarity on that. So we're talking about now making it into something possibly having this Invest Atlanta doing multi-family or mixed use or something. Is that what we're talking about?
That's correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Sure. Any other questions or comments? Okay. I will make a motion to approve as amended. Is there a second?
Second, Smith.
Motion by Westmoreland,
Second by Smith. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Any abstentions?
All right. 7 yeas, 0 nays.
0 abstentions. That item is favorable as amended. Next item.
Item number 6, 21-0-0191, an ordinance by Community Development Human Services Committee authorizing the mayor or designee to execute quitclaim deeds conveying the city's interest in 3 properties located at 879 White Street Southwest, 1154 Edgefield Southwest, and 1241 Almond Drive Southwest in an amount not to exceed $1 each to the Metro Atlanta Land Bank Authority for the public purpose of returning the properties to an effective utilization status in order to provide permanently affordable housing and for other purposes.
All right. These were the 3 of the parcels that Mr. Humphreys discussed during their presentation earlier. He is obviously still here. If anyone has any other questions or comments.
Move approval, Smith.
Motion by Smith, which I will second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right. 7 yeas, 0 nays, 0 abstentions. That item is favorable. Next item.
Our next item is number 7, 21-0-0209, an ordinance by Councilmembers Carlos.
Actually, Ms. Lundin, I think there's a substitute that may change the caption. Is that right?
Yes, that is correct. There is a substitute in your packet, and the substitute, I'm sorry.
Increases the limit from 1,999 to 9,909. Yeah. Okay. I'll make the motion to bring forward the substitute.
And was it 9,999 or 19,999?
I believe I will check. I think the executive order we got today made it 9,999, but we will check.
I don't know why.
Yes.
19.
It is.
Right.
It is 9,999. That's the number on the legislation.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'll make a motion to bring forward the substitute. Is there a second?
Second, Smith.
Motion by Westmoreland, second by Smith. All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, Ms. Polendini, will you read the substituted caption?
An ordinance by Councilmembers Carla Smith and Amir Arfroki as substituted by Community Development Human Services Committee to ratify Mayor Keisha Lance Bottom's executive order ordering that the moratorium on the acceptance of applications for permits or sub-permits for or relating to outdoor events governed by Chapter 142 of the City of Atlanta Code of Ordinances, at which the attendance is anticipated to be up to 9,999 persons, shall be lifted, and via which the Mayor's Office of Special Events and the City of Atlanta Department of Parks and Recreation were authorized to resume accepting new applications for permits or sub-permits for or relating to such outdoor events, provide that no event for which an application may be submitted in accordance with this ordinance or for which an application has been previously submitted may occur prior to May 15, 2021. Provide that all such events may only occur in accordance with certain prescribed COVID-19 mitigation requirements. Provide that the moratorium on the acceptance of new applications for permits or sub-permits for outdoor events at which the attendance is anticipated to be 10,000 or more persons originally ratified by Ordinance 20-0-1296 shall remain in place. To provide that the moratorium on the acceptance of new applications by the Atlanta Police Department for special events governed by Chapter 10, Article 2, Division 3 of the City of Atlanta Code of Ordinances, originally ratified by Ordinance 20-0-1296, shall remain in place and for the purposes.
Move to approve on substitute, Smith.
We have a motion by Smith, which I will second. Any questions or comments? All right, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? And any abstentions? All right, 7 yeas, 0 nays, 0 abstentions. That item is favorable on substitute. Next item.
Mr. Westmoreland.
Yes, ma'am.
Since we're talking about this moratorium and lifting it, I remember several months ago we voted on the Jazz Festival at Piedmont Park.
Yep.
Are we doing the Jazz Festival now in lieu of this? I'm just asking. I just thought about that in terms of events and we're doing that.
Yeah, I thought about that too. I'm not sure if anyone is on the line who can confirm this. I believe the city announced its intention to do the Jazz Fest over Labor Day weekend, as opposed to its usual Memorial Day. But I may have.
And we can get clarity on that later on. I mean, I just know May is right around the corner, and I was just wondering. And I thought about this with the moratorium. That's all.
Yeah. Now I think I will confirm that and share it with everybody.
Thank you.
Sure. Next item, Ms. Polendini.
Our next item is number 8, 21-0-0210, and there's a substitute in your packet which adds a new section 7 regarding parking and also attaches exhibits A and B, which are maps of the area and the MOU.
I'll make a motion to bring forward
a substitute. Is there a second?
Second, Smith.
Motion by Westmoreland, second by Smith.
All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, 7-0-0.
Ms. Polendini, will you read the caption?
It's an ordinance by Councilmember Carla Smith as substituted by Community Development Human Services Committee to waive the source selection and payment provisions contained in the City of Atlanta Code of Ordinances, Article 10, Procurement and Real Estate Code, including but not limited to Code Section 2-1547, leases of city-owned real property, and to authorize the mayor or designee on behalf of the City of Atlanta to enter into a lease agreement with Grant Park Conservancy for the lease of a city-owned building within Grant Park located at 880 Cherokee Avenue for an initial term that shall run from the date of execution through August 21st, 2022, with one 5-year renewal option in exchange for the Grant Park Conservancy's agreement to pay for all routine maintenance costs associated with the property and its use and any necessary routine repairs thereof, which would ordinarily be the responsibility of the city for the purpose of furthering the mission of the Conservancy and benefiting Grant Park and for the purposes.
Ms. Smith.
Move to approve on substitute, and I just want to say one little quick thing, which is this is the exact same thing that Councilmember Massakite did with Chastain a couple of years ago. So we got the exact same thing here.
Good deal. Motion to approve on substitute by Smith, which I will second. There are no questions or comments. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, 7 yeas, 0 nays, 0 abstentions. That item is approved on substitute. Ms. Shepard, I have twice confirmed now that the Jazz Fest is indeed going to be Labor Day weekend.
Thank you.
Sure.
Next item.
Item number 9, 21-0-0211, an ordinance by Councilmember Andrea L. Boone to authorize the Chief Financial Officer to make transfers within the coronavirus relief funds provided to the city pursuant to the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act, the total of which shall be utilized to cover costs that are necessary expenditures incurred due to the public health emergency with respect to the coronavirus disease 2019 that were not accounted for in the budget approved as of March 27, 2020, and that were incurred during the period that began on March 1st, 2020 and ends on December 31st, 2021, and for the purposes. There is an amendment in your packet to attach a revised Exhibit A. And just for the record, the previous item is a dual referred item and will be forwarded to the Finance Executive Committee.
Thank you. Ms. Butler-Burks,
are you here and can you speak briefly to the transferring the being asked to authorize?
Sure. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. Thanks so much for the opportunity to come before you this afternoon to speak very briefly on the recommended amendment that we're looking to make to the coronavirus relief fund. We have had an opportunity to go through a process of determining which of the initiatives we are ready to close out regarding funding, and then identifying, as we have been working throughout this process, other areas where we needed additional funding. So we're coming to you today to try to make those requests and transfers to be approved. So as you can see, I'll give you a couple of examples. The items that are in the red are places where we did not need as much funding as we thought we initially did. And so we reallocated those. I'll give you one example under the expenses for food delivery to residents. In this particular instance, the amount of money that we had set aside for our youth meals, we ended up not needing that much because the state actually changed their reimbursement regulations due to the coronavirus. So we were able to do state refunds on the majority of the funding that we've received that we had originally paid out for youth meals. So that's just one example of what you see here on the request to reallocate. And I'll take any additional questions that you all may have.
Sure. Colleagues, any questions or comments?
All right.
we got to amend first. I'll make a motion to amend. Is there a second?
Second, Smith.
Motion by Westmoreland, second by Smith. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Thank you. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right. I will now make a motion to approve as amended. Is there a second?
Second, Smith.
Motion by Westmoreland, second by Smith.
All in favor, say aye.
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 This is like our Pledge of Allegiance at full council meeting. 7 yeas, 0 nays, 0 abstentions. That item is favorable as amended. Next item.
And that item is also a dual referred, so it will go to Finance Executive. Item number 10 is 21-0-0212, an ordinance by Councilmember Andrea L. Boone to ratify Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms' certificate of order calling on the Atlanta Housing Authority, Atlanta Beltline, Inc., Fulton County, City of Atlanta Land Bank Authority, Invest Atlanta, Partners for Home, and the City of Atlanta's Department of Grants and Community Development to institute a temporary moratorium on residential evictions and filings, to declare that this moratorium shall remain in effect through June 30th, 2021, and for other purposes.
Any questions or comments? All right, I'll make the motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second, Smith.
Motion by Westmoreland, second by Smith. All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions?
All right. 7 yeas, 0 nays, 0 abstentions. That item is favorable. Next item.
Item number 11, 21-0-0214, an ordinance by Councilmember Andrea L. Boone to authorize the mayor or designee to enter into updated contracts with various project sponsors to continue to provide emergency support to vulnerable populations during the COVID-19 pandemic, using funds available to the city through the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development pursuant to Ordinance 20-0-1335 and for the purposes. There is an amendment in your packet which attaches Exhibit A, which is Ordinance 20-0-1335.
Okay. I'll make a motion to amend.
Is there a second?
Second, Smith.
Thank you. Motion by Westmoreland, second by Smith. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right.
7 yeas, 0 nays, 0
Abstentions. The item is amended. I'll make a motion to approve as amended. Is there a second?
Second, Hills.
Motion by Westmoreland, second by Hillis. All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right. 7 yeas, 0 nays, 0 abstentions. That item is favorable as amended. Next item.
Item number 12, 21-R-3297, a resolution by Councilmember Carlos Smith authorizing the Atlanta-Fulton County Recreation Authority and behalf of the Stadium Neighborhood Community Trust Fund Committee to award grants in a total amount not to exceed $1,709,995.28 to fund various community service projects to benefit the Atlanta neighborhoods of Mechanicsville, Peoplestown, Pittsburgh, Summerhill, and a portion of Grant Park and for other purposes.
Ms. Smith.
Pringle, Smith.
Motion by Smith, which I will second.
Second, Shepherd.
Okay. Motion by Smith, second by Shepherd. If there are no questions or comments, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right. 7 yeas, 0 nays, 0 abstentions. That item is favorable. Next item.
Items 13 and 14 are both task orders under the same contract. Would the committee like to take them as a block? There is a substitute for each of these items as well.
Yes, we would.
Okay. Item number 13, 21-R-3414, a resolution by Community Development Human Services Committee authorizing the mayor or designee to issue task order number S21061 for contract SC10641J with Pittsburgh Parker Fry JV LLC for the purpose of lake and pond maintenance services as evaluated and deemed necessary by the Department of Parks and Recreation in an amount not to exceed $84,621.09. All work to be charged to and paid from accounts listed and for other purposes. And the substitute for this paper updates the funding string. And item number 14, 21-R-3415, a resolution by Community Development Human Services Committee authorizing the mayor or designee to issue task order number S21060 for contract SC10641J with Pittsburgh Parker Fry JV LLC for the purpose of servicing Parks and Recreation irrigation systems as evaluated and deemed necessary by the Department of Parks and Recreation in an amount not to exceed $109,479.98. All work to be charged to and paid from accounts listed herein and for the purposes, and the substitute for this paper updates the funding string and the allocation.
All right. I will make a motion
to substitute both of these items. Is there a second?
Second, Brown.
Got a motion by Westmoreland and a second by Brown.
They still here? They still here?
Hold on. Okay. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Any opposed? And any abstentions?
All right. I'll now make a motion to approve items 13 and 14 on substitute. Is there a second?
Second, Brown.
Motion by Westmoreland, second by Brown. All in
Favor,
favor?
please say aye.
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 All opposed?
Any opposed? And any abstentions? All right, 7 yeas, 0 nays, 0 abstentions. That item is...
Those items are favorable on substitute. Next item.
Item number 15, 21-R-3416, a resolution by Community Development Human Services Committee authorizing the mayor and her designee to execute an amendment to the project management agreement with the Midtown Business Association, Inc. doing business as Midtown Alliance, for the Juniper Street Bicycle Pedestrian Facilities Project on behalf of the Atlanta Department of Transportation to include transportation impact fee funding in an amount not to exceed $1,272,785.00 and for other purposes.
Thank you. Colleagues, any questions or comments? All right, I will make a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second,
Brown. A motion by Westmore and a second by Smith. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, 7 yeas, 0 nays, 0 abstentions. That item is favorable. I will now make a motion to refer to the Transportation Committee. Is there a second?
Second, Brown.
Motion by Westmoreland, second by Brown. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
7 yeas, 0 nays, 0 abstentions. That item is referred. All right, that is the final item of our legislative agenda. Any general remarks from the body?
Mr. Chair.
Let's do, yes, sir. Let's do the question from Ms. Shepard and then the comment from Mr. Bond.
I have a question for the Parks Department. I have an issue where we have not actually been giving out people having events in the park. And I have a huge event that's going to happen in one of my parks off the Lincoln Park this weekend. The flyers are going out. We haven't been able to find out who is giving it. I've been searching. I also just got some information that there's an event going on in V.H. Stanton Park this weekend, Carla. I don't know if you know about that. Reaching out to the police department, and I'm just trying to understand the protocols from, and I don't know if Ms. Burks can tell me in terms of what we do with the Parks Department in terms of that. This is something that came up while I'm sitting here in this meeting. Can you tell me? My staff is saying that somebody's saying just call the police, and the police is saying, well, we need to reach out. Who do we reach out to? So can somebody give me clarity? If we have an event and there's no permit for these events, and they're huge.
Ms. Butler, Burks, or start with you, maybe.
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Sure. Okay, thank you. And thank you, Councilman Bishop, for that question. That's something that we've been trying to deal with on a weekly basis until we get to permits on May the 15th. If you have any particular events that you know of and have seen flyers of, if you could please just send those to me. And we have usually been working directly with the zone commanders and trying to make sure that we try to reach the event organizers to let them know, what can and cannot be done in the park. So we're more than happy to help coordinate that for you.
Thank you.
All right. Mr. Bond.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I'll ask the question of Ms. Burks since she's right here first. Ms. Burks, I have the pleasure of going out to Cook Park to see the installation of the John Lewis statue. Is there any, has any date been set for when the park is open? Because it is then, even though it's not officially open, it's in somewhat of a passive use by members of the community. So any determination when the park might be ready?
And thank you, Councilmember Bond. And yes, as many people know, the installation of the John Lewis statue was installed last week. And we are still awaiting a few erosion control issues to be taken care of prior to opening. And I know that we have had some passive usage in the park. We have been working very closely with Zone 1, who's been helping to provide some coverage for us, especially in the evenings and overnight when some of our workers are not there. But even though the park looks like it's ready to open, because the park is built as a result of a floodplain, we still have some erosion control issues that we have to resolve before opening. So it's things that people can't really see that still need to be done before we can open. But we hope to have something scheduled within early summer.
Okay, thank you. And then two, that came up yesterday in public safety that we wanted to talk with Chief Bryant and our Parks Commissioner is expanding the retired officers program to extend them to make them available for patrols in the park. The idea is, and I'm sure you're aware of some of the break-ins that have been happening over at the Cascade Nature Preserve, when there are groups of seasoned elders have been, they have their daily walks disturbed by repeated car break-ins. And the idea is that just many of the officers that provide security around some of our buildings, no folks know that City Hall, but others, we want to begin to have a conversation about whether or not we can extend that program to some of our parks where we have these chronic problems. So I wanted to make you aware of that we'll be reaching out to you on that issue.
Thank you, Councilmember Bond. I was listening to public safety on yesterday, and I heard Assistant Chief Court say that we would continue to work together to see what we can do. I have been speaking with the Nature Girl, who walked the Cascade Springs Nature Preserve Monday through Friday from 9 till 11, and have been working closely with them on some of the security issues, as well as working with the Atlanta Police Foundation on the cameras that we were able to purchase and hope to have installed soon. So we will work with the Atlanta Police Department to see if we can come up with some additional creative ways.
Okay, thank you. And my last question, Mr. Chair, is for you. Have we received any kind of update on the progress of the project in the Gulch? I know that many, one might assume that the pandemic may have slowed their development schedule. Is it possible that we can get an update on where the developers may be with that project, or if they've been hampered, just to get general information as to what the status is of that project?
Sure. No, that's a good question. I know that the CN Group presented, I think they present on an annual basis to FEC, and that update happened at some point late summer or early fall, but I think it would be entirely appropriate for a new update to take place, and this committee is a good place for that conversation to happen as well. You may have seen on social media that there was a ribbon cutting this morning, actually, that the mayor and Councilmember Winslow for the first building, the old Norfolk Southern building, that's going to be opening up as residential units with some amenities there on the first floor. So they are moving forward, and it's a good time for us to get an update. So I will definitely, I am being told that the next update on that topic will be in FEC on May 12th. But I will, at the very least, ensure that every member of this committee receives a copy of that report beforehand, and I'll talk with the administration about whether they might be able to come and brief us as well.
Yeah, I think it's important, given your leadership and our purview, that they make a stop by here. To kind of. I literally received a question this morning, so I want to make sure we pass it on to our committee and yourself. I don't think it's robbery for them to come by here, since it is a huge developmental project, that they give a nod to this committee.
Understood. I will endeavor to make that happen.
Thank you, sir.
Sure. Ms. Burks, you're popular today. I've got one more question for you from Mr. Hillis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And yes, Ms. Burks, the lady of the hour. My question is similar to Councilmember Vaughn's first question, but in regards to Westside Park, I've not received a whole lot of updates how that project is going, and would just like to hear where we are there with 1A and 1B, and when we're contemplating that park to officially open.
And thank you, Councilmember Hillis. I tell you, it's nervous to be the person of the hour at CDHS, but I appreciate it. I will say, and the answer is pretty much the same. It's interesting. It looks like we're just going to have a lot of ribbon cuttings for parks this summer. So for Westside Park, as you know, we continue to work with the neighborhood around some of the equitable development in that particular community, as well as we have re-engaged the Westside Park Advisory Committee, who met again last week and scheduled to meet again next month, I think it is. But that is scheduled for the summer as well. We are still on some finishing pieces. And I can tell you that on most weekends, we get calls that people have almost kind of gotten in over at the park a little bit and enjoying it already. But we are hoping to have that one ready for this summer as well. So we will have 2 openings this summer, one for Cook Park and one for Westside Park.
All right, thanks so much.
Thank you. And if you need any additional updates or anything, please feel free to reach out.
Will do. Thanks so much.
Okay.
All right.
Any other questions or comments?
All right. Ms. Smith.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn that I will second. Thank you, everybody. Have a good one.
Good meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Westmoreland. Thank you.
Good meeting.